Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, uttered these chilling words during his trial. Serial killers like Ramirez, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy force us to confront the darkest recesses of the human mind. What compels seemingly ordinary individuals to commit such heinous acts? How can someone who blends into society so seamlessly be capable of unimaginable violence? Today we're diving deep into the psychology of serial killers to uncover the twisted motivations behind their actions.
The serial killer.
Child killer.
Convicted serial killer.
Year-old, the UK's worst child killer.
While serial killers and psychopaths are often spoken about in the same breath, it's important to recognize that not all psychopaths are serial killers, and not all serial killers are psychopathic. Psychopathy is marked by a lack of empathy, superficial charm, and an inability to feel guilt or remorse. According to the Hare Psychopathy Checklist, which includes traits like pathological lying and manipulativeness, many infamous serial killers rank high. However, the difference between being a psychopath and a serial killer is critical. Dahmer, for instance, didn't exhibit the grandiosity or narcissism typical of someone like Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez. His urge to kill was more about a compulsive need for control and possession, not necessarily a psychopathic thirst for dominance. This distinction is vital to understanding the minds of these killers. While psychopathy is often an integral part of their behavior, not every killer fits neatly into this psychological profile. Many serial killers have reported that their violent behavior stemmed from uncontrollable compulsions. Jeffrey Dahmer admitted that his fantasies of domination and control began in childhood. He spoke of the urge as a growing compulsion that started with the fascination of dissecting small animals and gradually morphed into a desire to dissect human bodies. Similarly, John Wayne Gacy's murders were driven by a perverse desire for control over his victims. His outwardly normal life as a family man and businessman masked an inner world of depravity that culminated in the sexual assault and murder of 33 young men. Gacy's terrifying ability to maintain this double life, known as the mask of sanity, is a key component in understanding serial killers. Serial killers often derive pleasure from fantasies of power and control over others. These fantasies become so consuming that the individual seeks to recreate them in reality. The inability to distinguish between fantasy and reality is what leads to their ultimate downfall. One of the most common questions surrounding serial killers is whether their behavior is a result of nature or nurture. Were they born with a predisposition to violence, or did their environment shape them into killers? While many serial killers experience troubled childhoods, it's not always the case. Jeffrey Dahmer's upbringing wasn't marked by the severe trauma or abuse one might expect. His violent tendencies seem to emerge from a deeper psychological disturbance, a fascination with death and control that began at an early age. Psychologists argue that serial killers exhibit traits consistent with the five-factor model of personality: low agreeableness, low conscientiousness, and high neuroticism. These personality traits, combined with early life experiences, might explain why some individuals develop into killers. However, in cases like Dahmer's, where childhood trauma doesn't explain the behavior, the lines between nature and nurture blur. Serial killers can generally be classified into two types: organized and disorganized. Organized killers, like Ted Bundy, are highly methodical in their crimes. They often plan out every detail, from how they select their victims to how they dispose of the bodies. These killers are usually intelligent, socially adept, and able to maintain relationships, at least on the surface. Disorganized killers, on the other hand, are more impulsive. Their crime scenes are chaotic, and their victims are often chosen at random. They lack the careful planning of their organized counterparts, which often leads to them being caught sooner. Jeffrey Dahmer, though he displayed some characteristics of an organized killer, also exhibited disorganized tendencies, particularly in how his apartment became a nightmarish scene of decomposing bodies and horrific experiments. For most serial killers, the act of killing isn't just about murder, it's about power. Ted Bundy, for example, famously said, "I don't feel guilty for anything. I feel sorry for people who feel guilt." His murders were a manifestation of his need to exert dominance over his victims, both physically and psychologically. Richard Ramirez, too, reveled in the sense of control he felt over his victims. His infamous quote, "I love to kill people. I love watching them die," underscores the thrill he derived from the act of murder itself. Power dynamics play a central role in the psychology of serial killers. It's not enough to merely take a life. These killers need to feel as though they have complete control over their victims, bending them to their will. This is often why the process of killing is drawn out, with many killers deriving more satisfaction from the psychological torture than the murder itself. One of the most terrifying aspects of serial killers is how ordinary they often appear. The notion that anyone around us could secretly harbor the desire to kill is what makes these cases so unnerving. Serial killers like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy were charismatic, charming individuals who lived seemingly normal lives. Psychologists warn that while we can identify certain traits common among serial killers, it's almost impossible to predict who will actually become one. The combination of personality traits, environmental factors, and life experiences that lead to serial killing is complex and often unique to each individual. Serial killers challenge our understanding of humanity's capacity for evil. Their actions force us to confront uncomfortable truths about the darker aspects of the human psyche. As we try to unravel the psychological factors that drive them, we are left grappling with questions that might never have satisfying answers. Richard Ramirez once claimed, "We've all got the power in our hands to kill, but most of us are afraid to use it. Those who aren't control life itself." These words haunt us because they suggest a terrifying reality, that the line between good and evil is far thinner than we'd like to believe. In the end, understanding the psychology of serial killers helps us shine a light on the shadowy corners of the human mind, reminding us of both its fragility and its terrifying potential.